My name is Danielle Harper. I'm 36 years old. And the moment my relationship finally ended didn't come with screaming or cheating screenshots or a dramatic confession. It came in the middle of a meeting, while my cursor hovered over a spreadsheet when my phone buzzed, like it had no idea it was about to change my life. 2:14 p.m. Wednesday. Quarterly budget review. My entire department watching me present numbers like my stability depended on them. My phone lit up on the conference table. Adrian. I'm moving out again. This time it's permanent. Don't call me. I'll pick up my things when I'm ready. I stared at the screen for maybe 3 seconds. Not because I was shocked, because I was tired. There's a kind of exhaustion that doesn't feel like sadness. It feels like your body finally stops volunteering for pain. A coworker asked, "So are we increasing projected expenses or reallocating?" And my thumbs moved, almost on their own. I typed one word. Okay. Then I turned my phone face down like it was nothing, and I kept talking about budgets like my whole world hadn't just been threatened. Again. Because here's what people don't understand until they've lived it. That text wasn't new. The language wasn't even creative. In 7 years, Adrian had permanently left me at least a dozen times. Sometimes it was because I worked late. Sometimes because I didn't laugh hard enough at his mother's passive-aggressive jokes. Sometimes because I said the word no with the wrong tone. It always followed the same script. We'd argue. He'd escalate it into an apocalypse. Then he'd grab an overnight bag and declare we were done. And then, silence. He'd go to his mom's house, or his sister's, or the apartment of the one person I hated that he still talked to when he needed to feel righteous. His ex-girlfriend, Tessa. Adrian always insisted Tessa was just someone who understands him, the way some people say, just a friend, when they mean my personal echo chamber. Tessa had taught him the vocabulary of boundaries, but the way Adrian used it always felt like a weapon. If you loved me, you'd respect my boundaries. His boundary being, I apologize, I grovel, I chase, and he returns when he's satisfied. And every single time before that day, I chased, I called, I texted, I showed up with flowers and apologies and the desperate energy of a woman trying to prove she deserved to be kept. Because I loved him, because I believed commitment meant endurance, because his family always found a way to make it sound like I was the problem. Adrian is sensitive, his mother would say, pressing her hand to her chest like she was talking about a delicate child instead of a grown man. He needs reassurance. Men shut down when they feel criticized, his sister would add, like it was science and not excuse-making. And I would swallow my anger, swallow my dignity, swallow the part of me that knew this wasn't love, it was training. But something snapped in me at 2:14 p.m. in that meeting. Maybe it was the timing. He knew I'd been preparing that presentation for weeks. Maybe it was the word again, not written, but implied, like he knew it was a pattern and didn't care. Or maybe I was just done being held hostage by someone who confused emotional volatility with power. The meeting ended at 3:30. I told my boss, family emergency, I need to leave. He didn't ask questions. My face probably did all the explaining. I drove home with my hands steady on the wheel and my stomach strangely calm, as if my body had already made peace with the decision my mind hadn't fully admitted yet. The apartment was quiet when I walked in. Adrian's side of the closet looked lighter. He'd taken that nice overnight bag, the one I bought him for our anniversary trip that never happened because he wasn't feeling it that weekend. I stood in the living room and looked around. The couch I picked out. The TV I paid for. The framed photo of us smiling like we didn't know the future would involve labeled boxes. And I made a decision so clean it almost scared me. If he wanted permanent, I would make it permanent. I called a locksmith. Emergency residential lock change, I said, voice steady. Can you come today? Within 2 hours, the man replied. How much for rush service? $275. Worth it, I said before I could overthink it. Then I started packing. Not my things. His. And I didn't do it angrily. I did it like a woman finally closing a file she should have closed years ago. Closet first. His shirts, folded neatly into suitcases we kept in storage. His jeans, his hoodies, his shoes, stuffed into thick garbage bags, double knotted. His watches and the little sentimental junk he insisted mattered. Ticket stubs, a guitar pick from a concert he never took me to, a photo of him and Tessa that he claimed was from before us, but somehow never disappeared. Bathroom next. His electric razor, his cologne, his expensive hair product he guarded like it was gold, his towels, his toothbrush. Bedroom. His chargers. He had 3. His laptop, his stack of books about self-mastery that he never finished, his weighted blanket he used whenever he wanted to make his anxiety my responsibility. Kitchen. His specialty coffee grinder that I wasn't allowed to use because I didn't know how. His protein powders. His almond milk. The health supplements that always made him feel superior. I labeled everything. Clothes. Dress clothes. Casual bathroom. Electronics. Books, kitchen. Personal. Each label felt like a boundary made physical. The locksmith arrived at 5:45 p.m. Nice guy, middle-aged, calm, didn't ask questions. He replaced the deadbolt, changed the knob lock, handed me new keys. I placed the receipt on top of the growing wall of boxes by the door like a punctuation mark. By 6:30, everything Adrian owned was stacked neatly in the entryway. 14 boxes, 3 suitcases, 4 garbage bags of shoes and gym stuff. His yoga mat rolled tight against the wall like it was waiting to be claimed. When I finished, I stood there for a second and listened to the silence. No slamming doors, no shouting, no dramatic music. Just quiet. I ordered Thai food. I sat on the couch. I put on an action movie I'd wanted to watch for months but never could because Adrian thought they were juvenile. My phone stayed silent, and I knew exactly why. Because Adrian was waiting. Waiting for me to break first. Waiting for the frantic calls. Waiting for me to beg him to come home. At 8:47 p.m., I heard keys scratching in the lock. Confusion, a pause, then knocking. "Babe," Adrian's voice, irritated but expectant. "The door won't open. Is the lock broken?" I didn't answer immediately. I walked to the door slowly, the way you approach something you already know will bite you if you move too fast. I opened it. Adrian stood there with his overnight bag slung over one shoulder, brows drawn together in annoyance, like I'd inconvenienced him. Then he saw the boxes. The labels! The wall of his life stacked behind me. His face changed in stages, confusion, then disbelief, then something close to panic. What is this?" he demanded. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I just said the truth like it was a fact. "Your stuff." He blinked hard. "Why is my stuff—" "You said it was permanent," I continued, steady as stone. "You said don't call, so I didn't call." His mouth opened and closed, like the script in his head had vanished. "I was upset," he said quickly, stepping forward like proximity could reset the moment. "We had a fight this morning." "Yes," I said, "we did." Danny, it wasn't literal." He laughed once, sharp and nervous. You know how I get when I'm overwhelmed. I stared at him. I thought about every time I'd listened to that line and translated it into forgiveness. And I felt something new in my chest. Not rage. Clarity. "You always come get me," Adrian said, voice rising, offended now. "That's how this works." The sentence hung in the air like a confession. I nodded slowly. "No," I said, "that's how it worked. Past tense." His eyes flashed. "So what? You're just done after 7 years?" I looked at his overnight bag. The way he'd come home expecting the apartment to still be his, expecting me to still be his. Like permanence was something he could threaten, but I could never claim. "I'm exhausted," I said quietly. "I'm done groveling." Adrian's expression hardened. "You changed the locks? Are you insane? This is my home too." I didn't flinch. "It's not," I said. "The lease is in my name only." He froze. Because that detail had always been background noise, until it became a weapon. "It's been in my name since the beginning," I went on, calm. "Your credit was too low when we moved in, remember? You said you'd handle it later." His face went tight, his jaw worked. "You planned this," he accused. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was predictable. "No," I said. "I responded to your text, finally." His eyes shimmered. He tried tears next, because tears had always been the master key. "I don't have anywhere to go," he whispered, voice suddenly small. I tilted my head. "You said you were moving out," I replied. "That implies you had a plan." "I was going to my sister's," he said quickly. "But I was coming back. I always come back." And there it was. The entitlement. The assumption. The belief that my forgiveness was automatic, like a service I provided. "Not this time," I said. Adrian stepped closer, reaching for my arm through the narrow opening. "Please," he said, voice cracking. "I'm sorry. I was angry. You know how I get." "Yeah, I did." And that was the problem. "We can go to counseling," he rushed. "I'll change. I mean it." I watched his mouth form promises I'd heard before. After the incident at my company holiday party, after he threw my phone during the argument about our vacation, after he screamed at my coworker's wife for suggesting separate checks at dinner, like money was a test of loyalty. I gently pulled my arm back before he could grab it. "The cycle is exhausting," I said, "and I'm done." His voice snapped. "So that's it? You're throwing away our marriage because I sent one text?" I held his gaze. You sent hundreds of texts like that over 7 years, I said. This is just the first time I believed you. For a moment, he just stood there, breathing hard, staring at the boxes like they'd betrayed him. Then he looked at me, really looked, like he was finally seeing a version of me that wasn't trained to chase. And something in his face shifted. Not heartbreak, calculation, as if he was already thinking about what story he'd tell next. Adrian swallowed. My mom is going to hear about this. I didn't react. I just stepped back and nodded toward the stacked boxes. Take what you can carry, I said. Call your sister, call your mom. You have options. His eyes narrowed. And if I don't, then your stuff stays right there, I said, voice low, like you wanted. Permanent. He grabbed 2 suitcases, struggling with the weight, rage trembling under his skin. He didn't take the boxes. He left with the overnight bag he'd packed for his little performance, and the shocked realization that his performance no longer worked. The door closed. And for the first time in 7 years, I didn't feel guilty. I felt quiet. I felt terrified. And underneath it all, like a pulse I couldn't ignore, I felt free. I slept better that night than I had in months. Not deeply, not peacefully, but uninterrupted. No phone buzzing beside my head. No adrenaline spikes at imagined footsteps in the hallway. No rehearsing apologies in my mind before drifting off. Just quiet. That should have been my first clue it wouldn't last. At 7:28 a.m., the pounding started. Not a polite knock, not a hesitant tap. A full-body, knuckle-bruising assault on my front door. I was halfway through pouring coffee when it happened. Stood there barefoot, robe loose around my shoulders, blinking like my brain hadn't caught up yet. The pounding came again, louder. Danielle! A woman's voice barked through the door. Open up. I didn't have to look through the peephole to know who it was. Marissa, Adrian's older sister. I took a slow breath, set the mug down, checked the chain lock, still solid. Then I opened the door just enough to make my point. Marissa was standing there in workout leggings and a windbreaker, hair pulled tight like she'd come prepared to fight, not talk. Her eyes swept past me immediately, into the apartment, looking for Adrian. What did you do to him? She demanded. Good morning to you too, I said evenly. She scoffed. He's been crying for 2 days. He hasn't eaten. He barely slept. I resisted the urge to point out that Adrian had slept just fine during every single one of my breakdowns. He texted me saying the relationship was over, I replied. I took him at his word. Marissa's mouth tightened. You threw him out like trash, she snapped. 7 years, Danielle. 7. You don't just end a marriage because someone says something stupid when they're upset. I leaned against the doorframe, arms folded. How many times has he done this? I asked calmly. She hesitated, just for a fraction of a second. That's not the point, she said quickly. This is how Adrian processes things. He needs space. He vents. By threatening to leave, I said. By disappearing until I beg. She rolled her eyes. Everyone has flaws. Yes, I agreed, and this one exhausted me. Her face twisted in disgust. You're cold, she said. A real partner would fight for the relationship. I felt something stir in my chest. Not anger exactly. Recognition. A real partner, I said, stops when they realize they're the only one fighting. Marissa stared at me like I'd just spoken another language. He has trauma, she snapped. You know that. Mom always said, I've spent 7 years tiptoeing around it, I cut in gently. I'm done. Her jaw clenched. She stepped back like she couldn't stand being that close to me anymore. You're a coward, she said flatly, and you're going to regret this. Then she turned and stormed down the hallway, ponytail swinging like punctuation. I closed the door, locked it, stood there longer than necessary, my heart beating faster than I wanted it to. Because even though I'd held my ground, there was a familiar itch starting under my skin. The urge to explain, to justify, to soften the blow. I hated that part of myself. 20 minutes later, my phone lit up. Unknown number. You're heartless. Another buzz. How could you do this to him? Another. He gave you everything. By the time I finished getting dressed, there were 12 messages from numbers I didn't recognize. Some were cruel, some were theatrical. One just said, small energy behavior. I blocked them all. At work, I tried to pretend it was a normal day. Answered emails, reviewed documents, nodded through conversations like my life hadn't just detonated. Then, at 10:42 a.m., my desk phone rang. Danielle, reception said, voice hesitant, there's a woman here to see you. My stomach dropped. What's her name? I asked, already knowing. She says she's your mother-in-law. I closed my eyes. Send her away, I said quietly. There was a pause. She's very upset. Of course she was. I'm in a meeting, I lied. Please ask her to leave. Another pause, lowered voice. She says she won't. I pinched the bridge of my nose. Fine, I said. I'll come down. The lobby smelled like cheap flowers and tension. Adrian's mother, Linda, stood near the reception desk, clutching a wad of tissues like props, eyes already red and shining, as if she'd been crying since dawn. When she saw me, she inhaled sharply, like she was about to perform grief on a stage. Danielle, she said, voice trembling, how could you? Every head in the lobby turned. I kept my expression neutral. This isn't an appropriate place, I said evenly. You changed the locks, she whispered loudly, like she wanted everyone to hear. You threw my baby's things into garbage bags. I didn't rise to it. Everything was packed carefully, I replied, and labeled. Her lips pressed together. He's fragile, she said. You know that. He needs extra care. I looked at her. Really looked. This woman had raised a grown man to believe emotional volatility excused everything. With respect, I said, your son is 36 years old, and he's used that fragility to control me for years. Her eyes went cold. You're going to regret this, she said quietly. He's going to take you for everything in the divorce. I nodded once. Noted. She took a step closer, tears instantly returning, like a switch had flipped. You destroyed his life. No, I said softly. I stopped letting him destroy mine. She opened her mouth again, but security was already moving. Ma'am, one of them said gently, you need to leave. She resisted, clutching her purse tighter, casting one last look at me like I'd committed a crime. I'll never forgive you, she hissed. I'm not asking you to, I replied. They escorted her out. My HR manager met me upstairs with a concerned expression. We'll document this, she said. If anyone else shows up, let us know immediately. I thanked her, went back to my desk, tried to focus. That evening, when I got home, there were 3 voicemails waiting, all from the same unfamiliar number. A man's voice, sharp, accusatory. This is Mark, Adrian's cousin. You're a manipulative narcissist, you know that? You finally showed your true colors. You think you can just throw people away? I deleted them without listening to the end. The pattern was becoming clear. They weren't here to understand. They were here to punish, to rewrite the story until Adrian was the wounded hero and I was the villain who abandoned him for having feelings. They left out the dozen times he'd walked out, the threats, the tantrums, the way love had always been conditional. That night I sat on the couch again. The same couch, the same quiet. But this time, the quiet felt heavier. Not because I missed him, because I knew this was only the beginning. They were escalating. And Adrian, whether directly or through the chorus of people he'd trained to fight for him, wasn't done trying to pull me back into the role I'd finally refused to play. I looked at the wall of boxes still stacked neatly by the door. The labels stared back at me like evidence. And for the first time, I understood something I'd been too close to see before. When you stop begging someone to stay, they don't mourn the relationship. They declare war. The email arrived at 9:06 a.m. on Friday. Subject line, urgent. Improper retention of personal property. I stared at it longer than I should have, coffee cooling beside my laptop, a familiar pressure settling behind my eyes. The sender wasn't a firm I recognized. The signature read, Jonathan Pierce, Esquire, concerned counsel on behalf of a vulnerable individual. That phrase alone told me everything. I opened it. The tone was polite in the way people get when they're trying to sound reasonable while threatening you. He alleged that I had illegally retained Adrian's belongings, that my actions constituted unlawful eviction, that if I did not immediately return all property and cease harassment, I could face criminal charges. Criminal. I exhaled slowly through my nose. Because here's the thing about fear tactics. They only work if you don't know the rules. And for the first time in 7 years, I wasn't reacting emotionally. I was reading carefully. The email cited no statutes, no dates, no specific items, just vague accusations wrapped in legal-sounding language. I forwarded it to Evan, a friend from college who'd gone into family law and owed me exactly one favor. His reply came back in under 10 minutes. This is hilarious. They have nothing. She's not on the lease. You packed everything and didn't dispose of it. They're trying to scare you. He helped me draft a response. Brief, professional, almost boring. All of Adrian's belongings were packed, labeled, and available for pickup at a mutually agreed-upon time. No items had been damaged or discarded. Future communication should occur through proper legal channels. I sent it and waited. I didn't have to wait long. That afternoon, the doorbell rang. I checked the peephole. My stomach dropped, not from fear, but from recognition. Adrian stood there. Not alone. Beside him was his mother, his sister, and a man I'd never seen before. Tall, muscular, arms crossed like he was there to block something or someone. I didn't open the door. I spoke through it. What do you want? Adrian's voice sounded practiced. Calm, too calm. We're here to get my things. And who, I asked, is your friend? My cousin, Marissa said sharply. He's just here to make sure you don't try anything. I almost laughed. Try what? I said. I work in finance. I'm not exactly built for ambush. The cousin stepped forward, close enough that I could hear his breathing through the door. Just don't make this harder than it needs to be, he said. I slid the chain into place and opened the door a few inches. Adrian flinched when he saw the boxes still stacked exactly where I'd left them. 14 boxes, 3 suitcases, 4 garbage bags, untouched. Your stuff is right there, I said, pointing. I'll open the door. You can take it. No one comes past the entryway. His mother's face crumpled instantly. This is his home, she cried. No, I said evenly. It's my apartment. His name isn't on the lease, or the utilities, or the deposit. Marissa scoffed. You planned this. I met her gaze. No, I said. I responded. The cousin snorted. Whatever. Let's just get this over with. I unchained the door and stepped back, but not far. They moved quickly, like they were afraid I'd change my mind. Adrian avoided my eyes as he carried boxes out. His mother narrated every movement with exaggerated grief. This is what 7 years looks like, she sobbed. Reduced to cardboard. I said nothing. At one point, the cousin lifted a box labeled bathroom. Fragile, took 2 steps, and let it slip. Glass shattered. The sound echoed sharp and deliberate. Skincare bottles. Cologne. I didn't react. Didn't gasp, didn't protest. I just watched. Because silence, I was learning, unsettled them more than anger ever had. 45 minutes later, the entryway was empty. Adrian stood by the door, hands jammed into his pockets, jaw tight. You didn't have to do this, he muttered. I looked at him, really looked, at the man who'd spent 7 years threatening to leave me whenever he felt uncomfortable. I didn't, I said. You did. His mother turned back, eyes sharp now, grief gone. You'll be alone forever, she said. No one will ever love you like my son did. I felt something close to relief. That's kind of the goal, I replied. The door closed. I locked it. Then I changed the chain lock for good measure. That night my phone buzzed. Unknown number. You think you're being strong, but you're just being cruel. I didn't respond. Blocked it. And for the first time since Adrian left, I felt something solid settle in my chest. They'd tried intimidation. They'd tried guilt. They'd tried legal threats. And none of it had worked. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Because people who lose control don't walk away quietly. They escalate. And Adrian had just realized I wasn't coming back. I thought the box pickup was the end of it. That once Adrian had his things, and his audience, he'd move on to the next chapter of whatever story he was telling himself. I was wrong. The first call came from my apartment building 2 days later. The property manager sounded confused. Hi, Danielle, he said carefully. We received a complaint claiming you illegally evicted your husband. I closed my eyes. Did the complaint mention his name, I asked. Yes, he said, Adrian Harper. He's not on the lease, I replied. Never has been. There was a pause. Papers rustled. You're correct, he said. Only your name is listed. Utilities, too. I know. I'm sorry for the confusion, he added. We'll close the matter. I hung up and stared at the wall. That wasn't Adrian panicking. That was Adrian strategizing. 3 days later, the envelope arrived. Certified mail. Divorce filing. He'd finally made permanent official. I sat at my kitchen table and read every page slowly, the way you read something that's trying to hurt you by pretending to be factual. The claims were ambitious. He alleged emotional and psychological abuse throughout the marriage, financial abuse, citing that I paid for the majority of expenses while he contributed emotionally, entitlement to 50% of my retirement accounts, spousal support because he had sacrificed his career for the marriage. Half the value of furniture I'd purchased before we were married. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I just felt stunned, not by the audacity, by the confidence. Because Adrian had convinced himself, maybe with help, that reality was negotiable. I called Evan. He sighed audibly while skimming the filing. Standard opening move, he said. Throw everything at the wall. See what sticks. Most of this won't, but it'll cost time and money to prove it. I leaned back in my chair. His sacrificed career, I said flatly, was quitting a part-time retail job because he found it unfulfilling. Evan snorted. Yeah, judges love that. The discovery phase began like a slow invasion. They requested my financial records, which was normal. Then they requested records of every gift I'd ever given Adrian to establish the lifestyle he was accustomed to. They asked for documentation proving my controlling behavior. No specifics, just vibes. And my personal favorite, Documentation of my refusal to attend marriage counseling. I actually laughed at that one. I'd suggested counseling at least 4 times. Adrian had refused every time. Didn't want some stranger judging our relationship. I provided what was legally required. Nothing more. No commentary, no emotion. Just facts. 2 weeks into the process, my phone rang late one evening. It was my brother. He sounded uncomfortable. So Adrian called me. My stomach dropped. He what? Asked if I'd be willing to testify that you were emotionally unavailable during family gatherings, he said. Something about establishing a pattern. I closed my eyes. What did you say? I told him to lose my number, my brother replied. But I figured you should know. He's calling people. Anyone who knows you. That explained the next revelation. A coworker pulled me aside the following day. Hey, she said carefully. Someone called me yesterday, asked if I'd ever noticed concerning behavior from you over the years. I felt heat crawl up my neck. And? I asked. I declined, she said immediately. It felt off. It was off. It was desperate. Adrian wasn't fighting for fairness. He was fighting for narrative control. Then came the move that made my HR department very unhappy. Adrian contacted them directly, requested records of any workplace complaints filed against me. When HR told him they couldn't share employee information with random callers, he reportedly replied, I'm compiling evidence of a pattern of misconduct. HR gave me a heads up the same day. I documented everything. Dates, times, names. My attorney added it all to the file. By the time mediation was scheduled, I felt like I'd aged a year in a month. Not because I doubted myself, but because watching someone try to rewrite your life in legal language is its own kind of violence. The mediation room was small and windowless. A neutral mediator sat at the head of the table. Adrian sat across from me. He wouldn't look at me. His attorney spoke first. My client sacrificed his professional development to support this marriage, she said smoothly. He deserves long-term spousal support reflecting the lifestyle established during the relationship. My attorney responded calmly. Your client worked part-time by choice, quit employment voluntarily, and regularly threatened divorce as a negotiation tactic. We have the text records. Yes. Adrian finally looked at me then. His eyes were sharp. You're using my emotions against me, he said. The mediator raised a hand. Let's stay focused. 3 hours. 3 hours of every object in our shared life being dragged into the light. Furniture, appliances, the coffee maker he'd gifted me, bought with money I gave him. In the end, the mediator made recommendations. No long-term spousal support. Limited transitional support. My retirement protected except for a small portion of marital contributions. Furniture valued and split based on documentation. Adrian left the room in tears. His mother was waiting in the lobby. She started screaming the moment she saw me. Security escorted them out. That night, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. You win. Happy now? I have nothing. You took everything. I didn't respond. I screenshot it. Sent it to my attorney. Evidence. A week later, he filed a motion for a communication order. All contact through attorneys only. The final divorce decree came a month later. Adrian got less than he demanded, and more than I wanted to give. A small cut of my retirement. 3 months of transitional support, a few pieces of furniture. But he got something else too. The reality that permanent actually meant permanent. And that terrified him more than losing money ever could. I thought the communication order would end it. On paper, it was clear. No texts, no calls, no showing up. Everything through attorneys only. Reality apparently required reminders. The first violation came at 2:03 a.m. on a Sunday. Unknown number. I knew before I opened it. I remember our anniversary trip we never took. I was going to tell you I was pregnant. But then you had to be you and ruin everything. I stared at the screen, my pulse steady in a way that surprised me. No rush of panic, no desperate need to respond. Just analysis. I called my attorney in the morning. There was no pregnancy, he confirmed after checking records. No medical claims. Nothing during the marriage. So it was a lie, I said. Or manipulation, he replied. Either way, it violates the order. I documented it. The second violation was quieter, and somehow worse. 2 weeks later, I was working from a coffee shop near my apartment, the one I'd gone to for years, because the barista knew my order and the corner table had the best light. I felt it before I saw him. That sensation you get when someone is watching you. I looked up. Adrian sat at the table next to mine. Didn't speak, didn't smile, didn't even pretend it was an accident. He just stared. Not angry, not sad, empty, like he was waiting for me to acknowledge him, to prove he still existed in my world. I packed up my laptop, walked out, documented it. My attorney sent a warning letter the same day. After that, nothing. The silence stretched. Weeks passed, then months. Updates filtered in through people who didn't know how to mind their business. Apparently, Adrian moved back in with his mother. His sister made it 2 months before she got tired of the drama. Go figure. He picked up a part-time job at a boutique and complained constantly about starting over because of me. His mother told anyone who would listen that I'd financially devastated her son, leaving out the part where I paid for most of our married life while he found himself. The cousin who dropped the box on purpose? He bragged about it at a family gathering. Classy. About a month after the divorce finalized, I received one last thing. An envelope. Actual paper. Perfumed, heart sticker sealing the flap. I already knew who it was from. Inside was a handwritten note in Linda's looping script. She's still willing to work things out. True love means forgiveness. You're punishing him for normal relationship struggles. Please consider reconciliation counseling. He's changed. I didn't respond. I didn't even tear it up dramatically. I threw it away with the junk mail. Because by then, I understood something I hadn't before. Closure doesn't come from confrontation. It comes from consistency. 3 months later, my life looked different. The apartment felt bigger, not emptier, lighter. No eggshells. No rehearsing conversations before having them. No waiting for the next explosion over nothing. I took down our wedding photo. Didn't throw it away. Put it in a box in the closet. Maybe someday. I started seeing a therapist. Not because I was broken, though parts of me probably were, but because I needed to understand why I'd tolerated being threatened with abandonment for so long. Why I thought love meant endurance. She called it codependency. Wanting to fix people. Believing patience could substitute for boundaries. We're working on it. My friends showed up in ways I'll never forget. The ones who'd known Adrian well saw through the act quickly. The ones who hadn't took longer. But eventually, the details mattered. There's no new relationship. I'm not looking. I need to figure out who I am without someone constantly testing whether I'll stay. The financial hit hurt. The retirement money hurt. The support payments hurt. The legal fees really hurt. But the peace? That part is priceless. No more apologizing for existing wrong. No more being punished for not reading someone's mind. No more emotional hostage situations disguised as love. Last week, I ran into Marissa at the grocery store. She saw me. Looked like she wanted to say something. Then she turned and walked away. Probably for the best. The only thing I regret is not doing this sooner. All those years of fighting for my marriage, when really I was just enabling someone to hurt me without consequences. One text changed everything. Not his. Mine. For 7 years I said, please don't go. I'll do better. What can I change? One word ended the cycle. Okay. He expected begging. He got boxes by the door. And honestly, that was the most powerful boundary I ever set.